I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
Welcome to a Fantasy Fan Sportscast. Just one of the great shows on the Sportscrew Radio Network. And make sure you follow them at Sportscrew Radio on Twitter and iTunes. Sportscrew Radio Network, creating sports, fantasy sports, DFS, and gambling content 24/7. thesportscrew.com. I'm joined with my co-host, Mr. Chris Allen, and we're up to week 10. Week 10 of fantasy football. I mean, mostly there are people that will be done in fantasy in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Their season will be over. It's pretty amazing that we're there already. But how was your week in fantasy? Your league, your teams, your league, your now I think in our league, did you lose this week?
I did. Yeah. I had like 3 or 4 players. I think my whole bench was filled with just guys on bye. So I was like hunting the waiver wire and just pulling guys off the bench just so I could have a roster with like actually active players. And yeah, I fell short. I mean,
Well, I won. So that must mean I didn't really, I don't want to say that league's not important. It's actually up there in my leagues of importance, but not main league. Well, I mean, I'm checking standings here real quick. I'm just because I won and me and you were first and second to begin with. Then I lost last week and you won. I think now it's probably the same thing. Yeah. We're back.
I might still
second.
Yeah, now, I might still just have you just because the points tiebreaker.
Right. Yeah, you're 6-3. I'm 6-3. And the NFL, which I think is Malpow. He kind of cracks me up. Oh no, Jeff Hudson. He's also 6-3. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams. 4 teams that are 5-4. 2 at 4-5. 2 at 3-6. 1 at 2-7. So pretty competitive league right at the moment still.
Sure. Oh yeah.
In my league of record, in my home league, we have 7 teams that are 4-7, right? Would that be the right number? What am I? Or let me 4-7.
Possible?
No, I'm just. You talk for the show. I've had things going on just before the show that
I know.
Trying to. Normally I have all this stuff pulled up on monitors before we start. Today I'm working with one monitor because I didn't get it. It's amazing. There's like two teams that are at the very top, one team that's at the bottom, and then because I'm like, we talked about last night on our League of Anarchy podcast.
Yeah.
4-5. There's a team that's 7-2, 3 that are 6-3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams are 4-5. So 7 teams are 4-5, and then the next 2 are 3-6. So there's really nobody out of it, and and probably technically right now only one team that's pretty much 7-2 right now is probably a good enough record, but
sure.
Pretty competitive league this year, the League of Anarchy. And I would say, if you're enjoying this show through my podcast, and you get you'll get all of my Fantasy Fan Sportscast shows, and you can listen to the League of Anarchy. We always are fighting over something. It's a league podcast. So, how are you in your other leagues where I don't know you or know what you're doing? So you can tell me you're winning them all.
No, I'm not winning them all. I'm competitive in all of them though. I'm either 6-3, 5-4, somewhere in there. So in the playoff hunt in pretty much all of my main leagues. And then a couple of them, we're struggling. Right. But hey, I mean,
isn't it amazing though that we are already to week 10, and I know there's some the Fishbowl. Do those start playoffs in week 12? I know there's leagues.
Yeah, it's early. It goes early for SFB, if I'm not mistaken.
How are you doing in that?
Oh, let's one we're
not going to talk about.
Let's just move on from that one. Yeah, it's just it's not going well. I mean, all love to Scott and for bringing me in again this year. But after drafting Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, and Mitchell Trubisky as my 3 quarterbacks in that league. Things have not turned out as we had hoped.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's a no trade league too, right?
No, yeah, that's a no trade league because we have so many big name analysts and fans and all that. So, I mean, and there was no way that Scott would even want to entertain the idea of having to arbitrate any collusion, accusations. So there have been no trades in the SFB.
All right. So it's all waiver, but there's waiver wires and stuff like that, right?
So waiver wire, I mean, a blind bit, fab budget and all that stuff. So,
all right. And I posted the link out there a few places. If anyone's watching live on YouTube, you can post your questions in the chat, and we'll answer a question or two. But tonight, we started last week. We're going to just discuss the articles that you write for a couple places, and pick your brain with your expertise, even though you don't, like
so
that.
You say my expertise.
I know. Hey, all right, you can write good. Let's just go that route. You write better than me. The fantasy thing is still questionable, but still,
that's fair. That is absolutely fair.
You're the expert in writing.
There we go. I'll take that.
Definitely the best writer on this podcast.
I appreciate that. I will take that.
Mentally, I'm a great writer.
Honestly, I've been thinking about getting one of those. I want to get like the headset, or even if I could just speak directly into my microphone, and then words would like that diction software where it would just take your words and translate that and just type for you.
Right.
I need to get that software because that would be much better than me clacking away on my keyboard at 2:00 in the morning.
Having at it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just what's in my head when I put it down on paper it never reads as well as my head thought it would.
I spend so many, like, it's like writing for me. I know this is a massive tangent. We're already late, but writing for me is very much a one step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, like type of thing, where I'll write something and I'll look at it and be like, oh, that's good. And then I'll reread it and like, oh, that sucks. And then take out half. I don't think
it's off topic because that's something that you don't hear from other shows. Most podcasts, me and you listen to a lot of them, and most of the podcasts, and I use the word expert, the big shows, the almost all of them are writers. Almost all of them are people that write articles or write on websites. Because to be real honest, to just throw the words out there, it's hard to make a living, let's say, meaning the writing part usually pays the bills.
Right. Because I mean, there are a lot of folks, because there's 2 parts to being in the industry, as they say. And one, and there are a lot of people that are really good at it, I am not, is that they can craft like really actionable tweets and and they can put posts on social media that people will follow them. They'll gain these like really large sums of followers. I think that's almost an art as much as it is a science, being able to communicate actionable advice in like 180 characters.
Right.
I can't do that.
I can't either.
I'm not good at it.
Yeah, I'm bad at that too.
Yeah.
But
it's easier for me to write.
Where I was going with that is the insight here, because you technically are a writer first, I would say.
Oh,
and then you do the podcast here second, or other ones there. But, the difference, it's got to be even harder, because it's not that there's not research in other writing anyway, but like if you're just writing a novel, a lot of that is just coming off your mind. Yeah. Where you're writing about things that really happened or things that might really happen, and there's got to be numbers. And so the writing part is just the finished product, right? I mean, the work is the actual, looking up numbers, looking up statistics, following the game, the players and all that. So
it's easy. I mean, you could probably take a handful of, like, once you get into like the meat of my articles, like who I'm recommending you start or pick up to stream or drop or even all that, you could probably pick, like, I would say 75% of the individual sentences that are written. There's probably like an hour's worth of me just like going through Pro Football Reference or looking through Sports Info Solutions, even designing a study of my own to test it. I mean, all of it takes time. I mean, I'll have multiple Chrome tabs open, spreadsheets running, running different like scripts in the background just to make sure that what I'm saying actually makes sense, looking at different tools and all that. I mean, it's just it takes a lot of time to put together just even like 2 sentences of just actionable information. And it's just,
well, that's why I wanted to like bring that out. Again, this is new for us where we're actually going through your articles, right here on this show.
Yeah.
So people that already follow your work might get a little more insight here, or like we even said, I'm also going to pick your brain sometimes or question your stats. So
yeah, I want people to,
and that makes it a step a little different than if you're just reading the article on its own. So
right.
I wanted to get into the drop article.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Where do you publish the drop article every week?
The drop article is out on Number Fire. That one goes out on like early Tuesday afternoon. So I think about the same time. So the same day that JJ Zacharyson does his 15 Transactions podcast, so he does the 15 Transactions podcast, and that goes out on Tuesday morning. And then my article normally, like, it just kind of dovetails, like most of the stuff that he talks about. Some of them, like, it kind of like dovetails right into what I write about, like in from the droppables list.
All right. And the way the article's written, if you guys haven't seen it before, at the beginning you review what you told us last week. So we'll get right into that. Obviously, I think the Chase Edmonds call probably right now is good because Drake actually showed up and did quite a bit. Had a pretty good week. So obviously, obviously, even when Edmonds comes back, there's going to be issues in that backfield, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, because it's going to be you have your main guy, David Johnson. I mean, the guy that everybody's expecting to be the lead back there. Now you've got Kenyon Drake, who, I mean, he played well, and I know a lot of you and I, we both listened to Christopher Harris, and a lot of folks who even just peruse Twitter or like follow other analysts that do film breakdowns. There were a fairly decent amount of large holes that Kenyon Drake was able to run through. So to say that it was all Kenyon Drake, I would say pump the brakes on that. But still, I mean, if you're just looking at box scores and you saw the matchup as it was because they were going up against San Francisco and you thought that was going to be a hard matchup, Kenyon Drake, he did well. So, I mean, just looking back on it, most folks would sit there and think that, well, Kenyon Drake, I mean, he's now, you can't put that genie back in the bottle, and he has to now be a part of this now 3-man committee once Chase Edmonds is healthy.
Right. So I agree. I didn't try. I think we talked about it I traded David Johnson and Chase Edmonds and a few other. It was a combination and got Barkley. I think I'm better off with Barkley.
That makes sense. I mean, because
now Barkley hasn't done huge numbers the last few weeks.
Yeah, he hasn't done like a lot of Saquon Barkley things, right?
No, right now technically the first week I had him, Edmonds had a better week than he had, and then last week technically Drake had a better week than he had. So if I'd have just ran with the Arizona backfield, I'd actually have more points right now than Barkley.
Right.
People in my league thought the trade was horrible, but right now it technically is hurt me. Now, hopefully in the future, it moves forward. That being said, that David Johnson, then, I know this is a drop article, but where you stand right now on David Johnson? I mean, they're saying he's going to come back and that he's going to get his starting role back. But is it going to be the same David Johnson, do you think?
I think so. I mean, even with Chase Edmonds playing well, even with Kenyon Drake playing well, with the way that David Johnson plays the game and as both a running back and a wide receiver, I think there's a way that he can still recoup most, if not all, of his value within that offense. I mean, it's not like they're still not taking a ton of shots downfield. It's still very much the horizontal rate offense, like coined by Rich Rebar. And I think there's still plenty of targets that should be available for him in order to still make his way, like at least to produce as a fantasy player. It'd still be relevant that way.
Right.
So, and I think there was a report or like a conference call or whatever that came out earlier today saying that Chase Edmonds probably is going to play again this week. But even still, with David Johnson, he's practicing, he's saying 100%, he's ready to come back. But still, I think there's a way that they want to be able to use both Kenyon Drake and David Johnson on the field together, much in the same way that Green Bay Packers are using Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams out on the field together. And I think that's perfect. I mean, that is the best way to maximize the value of both of these, super talented players that you have on your team. I mean, why try and force the ball to really, I mean, not to say they're not talented, but let's say these unproven talents and Keyshawn Johnson or, any of the other guys they were passing to or trying to make a thing, Andy Isabella beforehand.
Right.
Just use the guys that you know are good.
Right.
And I think they can go ahead and there's a path for both Kenyon Drake and David Johnson being fantasy relevant moving forward.
All right. Another one, and we kind of debated this one last week that you recommended, and I didn't do this. I still have him, and that's D.D. Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, but now with the quarterback switching again, I'm kind of excited about that. And I like that the bye week's going to come up now. He didn't play last week. He didn't play most of the week before. And before all this, when he was healthy, he was getting a lot of targets. So I'm iffy about dropping him, especially in a league. If you're in my case, I have 3 top heavy wide receivers, and then I have a couple scrubs where if somebody went down, I like still the idea of having someone that, if he's healthy, still is going to get the majority of maybe, attempts or at least targets on this team. But so as of right now, you like the call of dropping D.D. Westbrook?
I still do, because it's hard for me to see, I guess, injuries we just never really know, especially if it was just a shoulder. Okay, fine. But shoulder and neck, that makes me think that there's just something more going on than what we really know. Again, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but it went from shoulder to shoulder and neck. And then he was completely removed from the game ahead of the head of the game in London. Now I know he's get this extra time to rest, but does that necessarily mean he's going to be ready after their bye week? And I don't know. And after their bye week, they come back, they play Indianapolis. They've got a pretty decent defense. They play Tennessee, I believe, after that. They've got a pretty decent defense, even though Malcolm Butler he's out for the season.
Yeah.
So it's like, even still after he comes back, what we're already questioning the volume. We've got the quarterback switch. And so that may or may not be good with him, because I know a lot of folks are saying that, well, Gardner Minshew liked DJ Chark, Nick Foles liked D.D. Westbrook. We don't know that. We really don't. Right. So, if we're already questioning his health, we're questioning his volume. Does he really become an essential hold after that? Is he really a wide receiver too somebody you want to hold on to?
Right. To me, it's always down to who's on your. I debated about dropping him today to pick up. Jets backup.
Ty Montgomery?
Nope.
Or Bilal Powell.
Bilal Powell. I picked up Bilal Powell. Now I ended up dropping Derek Henry, not Derek Henry's backup. Fournette's backup.
Raquel Armstead.
They have a bye week. I'm assuming they won't. Here, this is my strategy. If anyone in my leagues listening, I'm at the part of the season. I'm probably definitely going to make the playoffs. I like to have my backups right now, my handcuffs.
Yeah, now's the time to be doing that.
But because there's a bye week and the gentleman I'm playing has Bell, so Ty Montgomery was already on somebody else's team. I just am doing this. I don't plan on, needing the Jets running back. But if something crazy happened, I didn't want who I'm playing. Who is just a game behind me. I'd like to see him lose, to be honest, and I'm playing him. I kind of picked him up as but to be honest, my goal is to drop him on Saturday and pick up my handcuff again, so that I'm covered for the following week. But,
sure.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'll juggle a handcuff that's on a bye. I'm assuming no one's going to pick up a handcuff that's on a bye this week, because obviously Fournette's not going to get hurt.
At least you'd hope so. Chris Herndon wound up getting hurt when he was still coming back from
first week. The early part of the bye I always accept, because usually they're not practicing. So
right, yeah,
I'm willing to go. That's why I'll pick him up before waivers. Because than anything. Tariq Cohen, I kind of agree with you now, is really big on him. I'm kind of at the point where, would I keep him or would I keep a handcuff?
That's keep a handcuff.
That's a hard question, right? If you're definitely going in the playoffs, I think you keep your handcuff.
Yeah.
If you're not sure if you're going to the playoffs or not, and you have bye week problems, obviously Tariq Cohen's a better start than even a handcuff in most cases, but
I can see that.
It's close. Kuti just hasn't done much all year. I can't even come close to
argue. Rather be now injury, and now he's in the doghouse.
Yeah, the whole thing. All right, your drops candidates for this week. We'll go through it pretty quickly, because for me most of these are pretty. I agree. So there's less. It's no fun. Obviously, Gardner Minshew is a pretty easy one.
That kind of sucked that the same day because my article came out that like early afternoon. I think it was that same day.
So I was going to ask you that, or based on reading the article, you were doing it just based on how well he was playing and what was going to go on. And
because
now he's probably more of a drop, almost a no-brainer drop, obviously.
Yeah, because you
don't handcuff a quarterback.
Absolutely not. And I mean, at Number Fire, we want to give actionable information. Sure. So that almost be like me recommending that you drop, let's say, like when Will Dissly went on IR. Right. That'd be like me telling you to drop Will Dissly. It's like you already know to drop Will Dissly.
Right.
And it's so since I wrote that and I submitted the article like hours before, only like hours before,
Back when started our conversation.
Yeah.
This process there's more involved than some people think.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people just say, I play fantasy. Give me 5 minutes. I'll write an article. No, I get it.
If you can write 1,000-word article in 5 minutes, you'll have all the money.
Ty Johnson is your recommended drop now. Again, he was a major pickup for a lot of people just a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a fan anyway. I like McKissick better, and I still have McKissick in one league, and I still think there's a shot he could come out of their main running back still. So I don't have a problem with it. In our league tonight, there was a big trade that went down. I'm going to call it big. And it was Ty Johnson was traded for Josh Gordon. Some people thought that was pretty lopsided. Other people thought I looked at it like both have question marks. Both have. Yeah. Well, again, in home leagues, it's amazing how much a name affects things.
Oh yeah, name value is a
Gordon
big thing.
Value. And trust me, the guy who got Josh Gordon is the guy that I'm sure thinks he got the best part of the deal, and maybe he did. We don't know, but it's just because it's Josh Gordon. So Ty Johnson, I kind of agree because I wasn't sold on him anyway. But what's your main factor in making him a drop?
Well, I mean, for me, it's more of, do you really care that he's getting? Because I think last week was like the first time he saw like a slight uptick in snaps. Right. He had a few more carries this time, but he's not doing anything with them. Right. And
their offensive line, nobody is though. None of their running.
I mean, none of them are. So, I mean, even if I know we try and fall back on volume is king, but even if he is getting pardon the pun, but he's getting the lion's share of the touches still, and he's not doing anything with them, why should he be a part of your team? And you're not going to be able to move him at this point because you'd be selling him for literally pennies on the dollar. So is he an essential hold over any of the, let's say the handcuffs or anything like that? And I wouldn't keep. I mean, if you had a choice between Ty Johnson and let's say Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard, any of those guys, and you're sitting fairly pretty, or you have a playoff spot essentially locked up.
If you're not going to start him, you're better off with your handcuff.
Yeah, I would say.
And if you have to start him, you're probably not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at with him at this point. I mean, I guess you could look to last week and say, okay, well, it's looking like they might be more comfortable with him because like Trey Carson wasn't playing, and it's just down to 2 guys instead of 3. But even still, if Matt Stafford is now becoming like the Matt Stafford of like 2015, 2016, where he's going to pass it 30 odd times a game, and he's not, and he's only getting like maybe 2 targets.
I mean, I don't want to, you know me, we've done this a long time. I never brag. So I never come out and say, gee, I mean, months ago, one of us was on Stafford and one of us wasn't, I wouldn't bring that up. But
no, I know you're too humble for that.
No, right. Because if I could write an article about me saying Stafford could be, a viable option,
nobody would have believed you. Nobody would
believe me. No one believes me anyway. I'm just a fantasy fan.
Oh,
all
yeah,
right.
That's
Aiden Barber.
Also another one that was done because that one actually came out the next day.
Right. Because they did Ronald Jones now the starter.
Yeah.
But that is still coach speak. And in our commandments of being a great owner, we even talk about, you kind of sometimes ignore that. I think you can drop him regardless of what they said about, because even though the coach didn't come out and say it until this week, Ronald Jones was getting a majority of the snaps. So,
it was. I mean, if you look at snaps, targets, I mean, any of that. And of course he scored a touchdown, but still, I mean, you could tell there was almost a night and day shift from how they were used prior to week 9 and how he was used during week 9. I mean, it was just an absolute shift. So you could kind of see this coming.
Someone in my league is listening. I was wrong. It was Ty Johnson. I said Josh Gordon. That was a different trade. It was Ty Johnson for Brandon Cooks.
Oof.
So that was the trade, and that
I don't know if I'd make that trade.
Well, I'm not.
I think I'd rather have Ty Johnson, to be quite honest.
I'm glad I don't have either guy.
Yeah.
I have Woods, so I'm actually hoping that this help. Hey, I'm not. I really hope Cook come back. I think Brandon Cooks is a good ball player, and I wish him all the best. So I'm not saying it that way, but being an owner of another running back or another wide receiver from that group, I hope that this kind of picks his game up a little bit. But
sure.
Yeah, same thing. People in the league were trashing that deal, and I was like, I think it's pretty even. Either person could get, Ty Johnson maybe takes off a little bit, and maybe Brandon Cooks comes back in a couple weeks. Who knows? If he comes back and you get him for the playoffs, maybe. Now, I know the guy who traded for him is struggling to make the playoffs. Where to me, the trade like that to me would have seemed make more sense to somebody who had a shot pretty much of being in the playoffs, and you're just hoping, maybe Cooks comes around and makes the playoffs. Or you make the playoffs and you have him, that would be nice,
right.
That type thing. So, Kevin, you're out there. If you're on YouTube, if you type a comment in the thing, I can see it up there, and no one else will see it. So if you want to post my mistakes, see, I can't even get away from, these little mistakes. No one
never.
Always right. All right. I guess to me, this one's almost as much of a no-brainer as the Minshew one, and that's the Trubisky drop. I mean, obviously,
Buddy.
I think now even in 2 quarterback leagues and super flex, you can't play him, right?
No, I mean, what's your upside at that point? I mean, at a position where you're expecting to get the most points out of your the most points like from a position. I mean, where's your upside there? I mean, you're at least expecting 15 to 20 points like for a starting quarterback, and that's at a minimum. And Trubisky's not even getting that anymore. I mean, he's not running. He's barely getting over 150 passing yards, and that's mostly come like once the team is at a deficit. So, I mean, there's really no upside to holding him.
And you know what even makes it worse? They have a great defense. So he doesn't even,
he at least be functional. He just needs to be
we have seen quarterbacks just as bad as him almost be fantasy relevant because in the fourth quarter they'll throw for 200 yards. That doesn't happen here because they're actually in the game even with the bad quarterback play.
And it's especially more disappointing here in the 2019 season because this has been the season where we've seen multiple backups come into games and actually perform well. I mean, we've got Kyle Allen now the starter down in Carolina. We've got Daniel Jones over at the Giants. I mean, we've seen other backups. I mean, Matt Moore for the Chiefs. We've seen backups come into games, start, and actually play well and actually give their teams a chance. And actually, they've done well in some games. And then we've got this starting quarterback. I mean, the guy that was they traded up in order to get him, and this is what they get out of it,
right? But Mahomes went after him, right?
Oh yeah.
So, all right. Concerning trends. This one I thought and again, it's hard to believe we were running late and we're going to go 28 minutes to end your first article. So I don't want to get into too much, but this one I like, but have concerns, which this is called the concerning trend player. And it's Sony Michel. Mm-hmm. He's the one that obviously you have that, he's owned 96% of Yahoo leagues. I think he's probably that in all leagues. He's owned, just about everywhere. I think most owners are concerned. It's a struggle. Do you play him or not? He was drafted fairly high. How bad is your concern?
Pretty big.
I think, and I agree. I don't think he's droppable. I do think he's definitely a buy low person, but if you have him, that's hard to do because 3 weeks from now, it's the Patriots. You don't know 3 weeks from now, he could be getting 98% of the snaps in a game, so where are you going with Sony Michel if you have him?
If you have him, you try and package him in a trade and you try and get him off your team. I mean, even if it's having to sell, honestly, I think you could probably sell for, let's say 75 cents on the dollar, somewhere in there. I mean, depending on how you can package him. If you can package him with let's say a wide receiver 2, something like that, you could probably get a decent return for him. Give
me someone else close to him. How far up do you put Jordan Howard?
I think that's pretty close. I mean, I prefer Jordan Howard, to be honest with you.
I think I would also, but I
think it's close. I think that's close.
Drop Jordan Howard, though. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. It's close. Yeah.
I don't think you can drop him. If you can get something for him, that's fine. But I also know the way these Patriots go. They could be, all of a sudden 2 weeks from now, and he's in there all the time. Or and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think the Patriots have the easiest schedule in the fantasy playoffs either. If I'm not mistaken, I think they have one of the harder.
Let's see. Week 13, they're at Houston. Week 14, they're home to Kansas City. Week 15, they are at Cincinnati.
Well, it's not that tough then.
So it's not that bad.
Not terrible. All right. Yeah. I don't know. I think if I could buy him low enough, he would be one of those I wouldn't mind having on my bench, that if things went right and I got an injury once I made the playoffs, I guess I could start him as a flex. So I'm just saying, like I said, I just get an idea of what you were, because Jordan Howard, I'm starting to like more every week. And I think they're giving him the ball more every week. I know you see the numbers more than me. Is Jordan Howard definitely the number one now in Philly?
No, I think it's still split between him and Miles Sanders. Like, while I think it's more of if I had to put numbers to it, I'd say it's more of like a 60-40 thing, like between him and Jordan, or between him and Miles Sanders.
Miles Sanders, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And even with Darren Sproles coming back, although now that I'm thinking about it, can't recall offhand, but I didn't think there was a ton of work for Darren Sproles in his first week back from injury. But at least he's still there.
And Jordan Howard's definitely getting the goal line stuff too. Which, doesn't hurt. All right, let's switch to your quarterback streaming article. That's on 444.com, correct?
Yep, 444. That's where they're at.
Again, I'm getting my money's worth more. I'm paying attention now. I played with a few of their tools. I'm going to be a 444 expert before the season's over.
Look at you go.
That's right. So, and you know what? I got to say, now that I'm doing it and played with the tools a little bit, I pay a lot more for a couple other sites where I have similar tools. So it's really, for $29, it's pretty good. And I'll be honest, I don't even know. I think it's for a year. I don't know if it's a season or if it's a year.
I think the $29 one, I think, is for the rest of the season. I think. Okay. Yeah, depending on when did you get in, like about a month ago? Was like 3 months? Yeah, like I think it's just for the season.
I didn't know if it was a sale price or just I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was a sale price that we were having, and I think it's just for the end of the season.
Hey, then I'd recommend pay attention out there and see if you get a good deal and take advantage of the information. All right, let's go into our quarterbacks. The ones you recommended streaming last week: Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Matt Moore, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Obviously, Fitzpatrick was definitely the one that paid off. And Kevin, who is listening from my league, he actually, me and him talked Sunday morning, and somehow, he said something. Well, he needed to win. He was in a situation where he needed to win, and it's a super flex league. So at the early, and he had Mahomes. And then realized, obviously, Sunday morning, Mahomes wasn't going to play. And I happened to look at his roster, and I said, well, you have Mahomes on your bench. I said, as soon as they say he's inactive, you should be able to move him to the IR spot.
Yeah.
And then go pick up a quarterback, and you got a better shot at winning. And then he texts me back, something. He goes, okay, I'll pick up Matt Moore.
Okay.
Again, I'm in this league. And I said, all right, you can do that. But I said, I'm kind of more on the Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick was going to fling the ball a lot last week. Right. And he goes, do you really think that? I said, that's what I think. And me and Chris kind of talked about it. It's one of his streamers. And So he ended up at the last minute switching more for Fitzpatrick, and he ended up winning his week. So,
hey, that's why I love.
Yeah.
You love to hear it.
You gotta love when advice, pays off sometimes.
Right? Yeah.
So Fitzpatrick was one that really paid off the most for you. Derek Carr, I thought was an okay, top 12 if you're streaming, you can live with that. In our 2 quarterback league, Sam Darnold and Matt Moore I don't think started on anybody's team. So
probably not.
It's we have an owner that has Derek Carr. So, what do you think? I mean, do you think you just missed on Sam Darnold, or did everyone miss on Sam, including the Jets?
Oh, I think everybody missed on Sam Darnold. I mean, he was a consensus streamer, I think, across the industry. I saw everybody talking about Sam Darnold as a possible streamer this week. I mean, the matchup.
Okay.
What more could you ask for?
In real football.
Real football.
We all did the Jets miss on him. He looks terrible.
I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I think it definitely is a confidence issue. I was listening to Evan Silva's podcast with him and Adam Levitan over at ETR talking about going over some notes from the game, and it seemed like there was a play, I think, where he fumbled out of the back of the end zone. And I think it was noted after the play, there were some linemen that were yelling at him because he didn't really hustle in order to get the ball before it went out of bounds. There's definitely a confidence thing with them. I think it's also a coaching thing, a play calling thing that's going on, with Adam Gase kind of pulling the strings there. So I think it's a confluence of both of those things that's really kind of hindering him, because this is not the same Sam Darnold. I mean, you go to Next Gen Stats because they have the passing charts there available. That's free public data. But you go to Next Gen Stats, you go to the passing charts, and you look at his Week 6 passing chart where they played Dallas and he passed for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then you put that side by side against his passing chart from Week 9 against the Dolphins. I mean, it is completely different. It's completely different. There were downfield shots. I mean, he scored on that long bomb to Robbie Anderson that night against the Cowboys. It was much more spread out offense, much more deeper intermediate passes. This one against Miami, it was just, Jamison Crowder went nuts. I mean, he had 8 for 83 and a touchdown.
At all, you stream it at all anymore this year?
You can. I think at the very least, I think he offers you a floor, but that's just in the best of matchups.
Right, which I think he plays Miami one more time.
Right, so it's
he didn't do that well against Miami this time.
Right, so I think at best, he offers you a floor if you have no other options. But if you're looking for upside, then he would be. I wouldn't look at him. I'd rather look at who Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing that week. So if Ryan Fitzpatrick is now going to be playing the Jets again at some point, then yeah, I'd much rather play Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'd much rather play Daniel Jones.
Why we just right off of this week? But your top streamer this week is Derek Carr, who was also on your streamers last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's getting close to being a non-streamer. Definitely in 2 quarterback leagues, he's probably getting close to being a starter.
I think so.
Obviously in single quarterback 12 teams, it's still questionable in matchups. Maybe. What do you like about Derek Carr this week against the Chargers?
I think, one, it comes down to, I don't think the matchup is as tough as people are making it out to be. I mean, I know that Joey Bosa, he essentially lived in the Packers backfield this past week. But the Raiders, their offensive line is just one of the league's best units. I think it's PFF's either number 1 or number 2 rated offensive line. I think they were number 2 in offensive DVOA this past week on Football Outsiders. I think that, but also, just look at it. Derek Carr, he's had 1 sack in 4 weeks. The 1 sack. That's all that they've allowed in 4 weeks. They've played a decent amount of people. It's not like they've been playing against Miami and some of those other guys. They've actually had some pretty decent matchups. So it's pretty remarkable that their offensive line has been able to hold up at least as much as it has been able to. And Derek Carr, I think he's been serviceable. He's been able to put up decent numbers the past few weeks. And so I think this is a matchup that they should be able to take advantage of. With the Chargers, they only have, they have 1 legitimate cornerback, but past that, the intermediate, the short to intermediate areas of the field, they can work within that. And that's where Derek Carr normally likes to pass anyway. So even if Tyrell Williams, I know that he's been having foot problems the past couple of weeks. He looked fine last week, but even still, I mean, that leaves a ton of room for guys like Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, in order to eat up most of those like short to intermediate passes that Derek Carr has been throwing, because his ADOT is, I want to say, either to like middle to back end of the pack, but still, I mean, that's the
right.
We'll take the yardage all day as long as the touchdowns will come, and I think given their matchup, I think that's pretty likely here in this case.
All right.
They do have a short week though. They are playing tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's true. Thursday night. I always hate streaming somebody on Thursday night.
Yeah, Thursday night. It's a AFC divisional matchup. I mean, so it's got all the making.
It's not all that even. It's just things can change Friday and Saturday, and you go, oh, now there's a better option. It's like, oh, I wish I'd have waited, and then I could have streamed that guy.
Yeah, it has all the makings of a low scoring game. I mean, yeah, AFC divisional matchup, like all that good stuff. But I mean, it does have like as of right now, I think the point total on that one's 49 points. So I mean, it's not that bad. Right. I mean, 49 point game total.
Your next streamer is Daniel Jones, playing against the Jets. So yeah, Giants versus Jets. I like him as a young prospect. Actually, he reminds me of what I thought about, Sam Darnold last year. You're like, oh man, he's got a chance. He's young though. He's still doing this and that. And then obviously Sam Darnold did not get better, but
right.
I think Daniel Jones has a shot at getting better, but let's, stick with this week. What do you like about him as a streamer versus the Jets?
Well, I mean, originally when I was, cause I normally start planning out, I go through, this is like my process. Like on Sundays, I'll sit down and turn on the 1 o'clock game, whichever local game is on. But once that game starts, I pull up the schedule for the next week, and then I start looking at the matchups, and I start my research like Sunday at 1 o'clock. And originally when I had, started like penciling out this article, I had Sam Darnold as like my either number 1 or number 2 streaming recommendation for this week. Then after I watched that game, I was like, no, I can't do this. Right. But after I saw Daniel Jones play on Monday night, as I was typing this up, I was like, I think this guy, again, because we were talking about upside.
Yeah.
And I think
still runs a lot.
And that's the thing. I mean, he runs. I mean,
here, 7 yards there.
I mean, of course, like when he ran, he wound up fumbling. Yeah. So there's a chance for turnovers. He's a rookie. We get that. But I think if you had to like objectively compare how Daniel Jones' season has gone versus Sam Darnold's, I think if you were to look at this matchup and say, okay, which quarterback do you think has the more upside to finish with, let's say, close to 20 fantasy points or more? Well, I would say it's Daniel Jones. Now, Evan Ingram isn't going to be playing in this game, so that's one weapon removed.
Right.
But still, I think with the way that the Jets offense has been playing, I mean, there's still, I can see the range of outcomes for the probability that Daniel Jones winds up at least, let's say, 200 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. I think that's way higher. The probability is higher for him to hit that mark than it is for Sam Darnold.
All right. And then obviously we're going to skip the deep streamer you have as Sam Darnold. We kind of already talked about him. Honorable mention, Brian Hoyer. I always liked Brian Hoyer, and now they don't have T.Y. Hilton. So
right. And I guess as of this point, I guess Jacoby Brissett is practicing, saying he's feeling good. So on and so forth. So really, Brian Hoyer just means that is just a placeholder for just say Indianapolis quarterback. Right. Whichever one is going to play,
then
play that guy.
Streamer. Right.
Yeah. Although I still have my concerns because, I mean, if you've seen any video about like a quarterback trying to explain like how they wind up passing, I mean, passing is a full body thing. It's not just like from the waist up and you're just like kind of, I mean, it's a full body transference from your back foot forward through your waist, like hips and into your shoulders and all that. Mm-hmm. So if his knee is bothering him, MCL or not, I mean, can you really pass the ball all that often? I mean, I could just as easily see him just taking a quick 2-step drop, handing the ball off to Marlon Mack, and then having Marlon Mack just run over them for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's his day. Right. But if it's Hoyer, I think he's just as likely to. I mean, he can still hand the ball off to Marlon Mack, but I think he has a better shot at least passing downfield to Pascal, Doyle, or whomever.
And
so
then
I prefer Hoyer at this point, just because, I mean, if it's a knee problem, how often do you really expect Jacoby Brissett?
But if you only have a couple choices, again, remember, one of your streamers plays Thursday night. So if it's between, if Brissett's not out there and you have to choose, you might now pick Thursday night because you don't know if Hoyer's even going to play on Sunday.
I'd still prefer, to me personally, I'd still prefer Carr over the Indianapolis quarterback at this point.
Either way. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Carr, right. Now, Carr, I would still put on top, but I'm going, but not Jones. I mean,
no, not Jones. I would say, yeah.
Right. So, all right.
If Evan Ingram was playing, I would say Jones over the Indianapolis quarterback. But with Evan Ingram being out, that's one less weapon for him. I would say, let's see how the Indianapolis situation.
Then looking ahead, obviously you have bench spots in your league where you can put somebody in your streaming. You have Keenan Allen as someone to look for down the road because he plays the Falcons, which the Falcons have given up, a lot of fantasy points for quarterbacks. So.
And now he is the guy. Now that Cam Newton has been placed on IR, and of course the speculation about is he going to be out of Carolina like after this season? His non-guaranteed contract, which is like $20 million, and all that other stuff is already happening, and all that stuff.
All right, now because I asked Kevin to post a question, he posted a long one. So we've been 45 minutes. Before we leave your articles, anything I didn't touch that you want to say? I think quarterback.
No, I think we hit everything. Yeah, I think we hit everything.
Which, and again, I know Kevin pretty well, but
he's a good dude. I mean, he beat me fair and square this week, so congratulations.
This here, on the bubble of making the playoffs in a keeper league, we can keep 3 to 4 guys. When I hear his team and then I see his, he has Barkley, Chubb, Keenan Allen, Godwin, Green, Sutton. Keenan Allen was one of his keepers from last year. It's hard to believe his, but he's on the cusp. He's at 5-4 with that team. So I don't know if it's been luck or not. That's a pretty good team.
Yeah. That sounds like bad luck.
But his real question is, now that we know his keepers, and he's close, he obviously needs to win now. Would you look to unload any of those particular people? And I think he specifically said, would you try to trade Keenan Allen? But based on what you see, his team, his record is 5-4, so he's the middle of the pack. Would you look to move one of those guys, specifically Keenan Allen, who's not done real well for him? And he has Hunter Henry as his tight end. So it's a pretty good team. So I don't know. I'm still a Keenan Allen guy.
Me too.
I think things have just not gone right for that line and some other things. Keenan Allen I really believe it could go either way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, but Keenan Allen could just as easily be the best wide receiver the next 5 weeks in the NFL as he is somebody who only gets 2 catches.
Right.
The upside to me is tremendous still with Keenan Allen. So I'm trying to look at who else he has though. If you can move other people, again, that team just looks awful good to me, right? I mean,
out of all those
players, I can't imagine a running back starting over Barkley or Chubb necessarily. You have Godwin, Keenan Allen, and Sutton as your, wide receivers. And that would still leave AJ Green on your bench if he ever plays. So he's just asking for advice. Would you move one of those players and try to get somebody who's more productive now? I just don't know. I don't know what you're going to get for Keenan Allen. It's going to be more upside than Keenan Allen. Right.
Because I'd be hard pressed to believe that somebody would want to you can't sell high on Keenan Allen at this point, right? Like he had four targets this past week.
Right.
So, I mean, at best, if you wanted to get out from underneath Keenan Allen, you could probably do something where you could look at a wide receiver needy team and maybe package Keenan Allen and Courtland Sutton together. With Courtland Sutton coming off of the big game this past week, because he'd be the only. He seems like the odd man out to me. Because
who above Keenan Allen would someone trade anyway? In my book, Julio Jones, Evans. Even if I had those guys, I don't think it's much of a difference if I have Evans or Allen. I think both could be just as good the next 6 weeks, and both could be just as bad.
What about Devontae Adams?
Devontae Adams is probably available, but I'd even question, I'd almost say 50-50 on Allen and Adams too, right? I mean, Adams is still, I don't think 100% healthy. Not that I think Keenan Allen is closer to being 100% healthy than Adams. And I think Keenan Allen has played more hurt the last couple weeks than we think.
I think so.
And you know what? I'll put this another way. There's something about and I would say this same with Rodgers though. I think Rivers I think Rivers isn't going to go out the way they're playing right now. I think Rivers is going to just throw that ball all over the place for a few weeks if that's what it takes.
I think so. Yeah.
So if they had another quarterback, I'd be more worried. I think Rivers is one of those guys that doesn't want to lose the last game of the season, even if he hasn't won a game all year, So
yeah.
I don't know. Kevin, when I see that team, I struggle to see what you would get better upside wise. I guess you can't get better than Barkley. I don't even know.
You could get better than Barkley. I mean, you could try and swing for the fences and go for Christian McCaffrey at this point.
Well, yeah, if the guy being a keeper league, that might be hard to do. If I had McCaffrey in a keeper league and I got to keep
I would never give up. I mean, you'd have to give me like four players, like 4 good players in order for me to even entertain and and
you got to remember he hasn't had his bye yet either. So if you're on the cusp, if anything, Kevin, that's what I would look for right now would be if you have players if any of these players on your team right now have already had their bye, obviously I'm not moving them, but obviously you have to win. I would look at the player on your bench that's got the bye the next week or two. Or if 2 of them have if 2 of those guys have a week 12 or 11 bye together, those would be 2 I'd try to package for somebody where I'd be willing to maybe take a lesser deal knowing that, but that lesser guy's already had his bye week and I need to win out, that kind of thing maybe. So, because I know Hunter Henry, now that I think about that, he is Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry are both on the same bye week. And I want to say week 11. So, you're going to have a tight end and one of your top wide receivers on bye in the next couple weeks. So, and obviously if you're 5 and 4 in the middle pack, pick on the guys that I think you maybe could still lose a game or 2, but at the same time, there's probably someone in your league that can't afford to lose 1 game. And that's the guy I'd pick on.
Yeah.
If I had to win this week, and I can't think there's quite a few teams on bye. Maybe like a Fournette. Would you trade a Keenan Allen for Fournette? Would you rather start Keenan out? Would you rather start Fournette than Chubb? Maybe let me go that route because that would be.
I'd rather start Chubb.
It'd be close. Now, to be honest, though, I wouldn't have no trouble starting Barkley, Chubb, and Fournette as my flex. And then obviously it gives you a little more flexibility. Then you would have Godwin and Sutton, and the AJ Green on your. I don't even consider him on your team because he's not playing. But
yeah.
I'm just saying I would maybe consider that.
Oh, that's fair.
And Hunter Henry could be a tradable guy. He's got to buy in a couple weeks if you have a second tight end or somebody, but
yeah, I think that's also fair.
And knowing your keeper rules would probably make a little bit of a difference. I don't know. I think it's hard to believe, but that's fantasy, right? You can have the best team and not have the best record. It's
absolutely.
It's crazy. Cause you look at that. Chubb's had bad weeks. Barkley's had bad weeks. Allen's had bad weeks. AJ Green's not playing. Sutton's I can't say Sutton's had a terrible week, but he's had obviously ups and downs. So obviously
now playing with a backup quarterback, I think now would be the time to sell him.
Oh, that's right. I definitely, Sutton to me, even though he had, unfortunately, a lot of people, the argument you just said, I heard last week, but then he had a good week this week.
Mm-hmm.
Me and you talk a lot about that. I'm a big believer in, a new quarterback, a defensive coordinator can't do much, meaning they still didn't know what they were up against. And now the next team or 2 they're playing will be able to set up schemes and all that to, go towards the quarterback's weakness. So if anything, I agree. Sutton would be the guy on that group. If I was going to move and maybe could get something higher than the value for Sutton, would you rather have Odell Beckham Jr. right now than Sutton?
Oh yeah. Without question.
I would too. But there's people out there that would rather have Sutton right now than Odell Beckham. I think
that's surprising. I mean, I believe it. I believe it. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I mean, it is.
But there's people that just, it's just like he's fed up with Keenan Allen. There's somebody else fed up with Odell Beckham.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
My point is, though, don't sell the guy you're fed up on. Just because you're fed up doesn't mean he's not a good player. Mm-hmm. But go get someone else's fed up guy. Get rid of a Sutton.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it doesn't work out. We talk about that all the time. Doesn't mean it works out. But
right, and Odell. I mean, I think Cleveland has a pretty decent playoff schedule.
Pretty soft.
Yeah, I know that they still have to play. They play Buffalo this week, and then they've got Pittsburgh, Miami, and Pittsburgh. And then they play Cincinnati in week 14, and then Arizona in week 15.
Right. Oh, right. So a good. Good run.
I mean, good stretch run during the playoffs.
I bought low on Odell Beckham in another league, not the league I'm in with Kevin. In a different league, I bought low on Odell Beckham, and mainly it was because of that playoff schedule. So, now that being said, I know Kevin. I don't know if you saw in his shirt. Kevin's wearing he's a Denver Broncos fan, so selling Sutton might make it a little bit harder.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Also, but good luck, Kevin, in that league. All right, we killed 55 minutes, and Kevin gave us a nice question there at the end.
Good discussion. Yeah, I'm hoping. So, well, I guess to bring it home though. So, what are we saying? So, at the very least, I mean, if you want to try and move anybody off his roster, I mean, Courtland Sutton would be a guy to move now. And if you want to try and move Keenan Allen, it'd be difficult.
Yeah.
Just based off of where he's at the moment. But if we want to look for somebody with a little bit more upside, I mean, and that is probably sitting at a similar level right now, I guess Odell Beckham would be, I think he'd be a pretty decent trade target at this point if you're looking to get out from underneath Keenan Allen.
Right. Now, let me ask you this real quick, only because it came up and we're in the Cincinnati. Trust me, Kevin isn't going to get rid of Sutton. I know that now. But could you? Are there a few people in home leagues that would maybe now bite on AJ Green?
No.
Okay.
I mean, because even Cincinnati fans, we saw the practice report earlier.
Right.
We know what the team is like.
But again, if you're wide receiver weak and you want to take a long shot, I might take Green from somebody. Now, I'm not going to give a lot. I'm trying to think, what running back I would give up to get Green. Let's say if I have
you'd have to get Ty Johnson.
Singletary. If I have Singletary, would you give up Singletary right now for Green if you already have two other good running backs?
No.
I really wouldn't either. No. Tariq Cohen, would you give up Tariq Cohen for Green?
Yes. Tariq Cohen for AJ Green. Yes. What about?
But looking at Kevin's schedule, I agree though. But if I had Kevin's team, I'd rather have Cohen than AJ Green because there's a chance that Cohen at least goes out and gets you PPR points if it's a PPR league.
Well, there's a chance that AJ Green goes out and gets you points in a PPR league.
Yeah, that's true too. All right. Especially if you have an IR spot. You obviously don't even have to move him yet.
Right. And which one do you think is more likely to get a touchdown, assuming they're both active and on the field? Which one do you think is more likely to get a touchdown?
Well, the problem is AJ Green, though, has all kinds of issues. A new quarterback. Supposedly we're going to see a different offense. I don't know. It's
not that. No.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know. I agree. Odell Beckham that's the first name that comes to my mind that you might be able to get from somebody who's frustrated.
Yeah, I think so.
What about a Sony Michel? We talked about him earlier in the show. Would you give up a Sutton? Is that too much giving up Sutton for Sony Michel?
You'd have to find somebody in dire straits for that. Cause I feel like if I was the Sony Michel owner and you're offering me Courtland Sutton, I mean, that really is like pennies on the dollar right there for me. I mean, but you're buying into the Denver Broncos situation. And
You'd rather have Michel than Sutton.
I think I'd rather hold on that one. I probably need a little bit more. Give me
AJ Green and Sutton now for Sony Michel.
Well, so now we're talking.
Okay, and so would you be fine now going with Barkley, Chubb, Sony Michel, Keenan Allen, Godwin? That's now and Hunter Henry.
Then you can swap off of some of in some of the bad weeks. You can move Sony Michel in.
Make Sony Michel nice in a flex.
Yeah, if it's I know it's a PPR league for him, but we just talked a little bit ago about Sony Michel. I mean, they've got some decent matchups later on down the line, so we could see a possible Sony Michel game coming up. So yeah, you could probably swap them in on some good games.
All right. Hey, I had a blast.
Always.
I needed an hour of talking football. So now I can get back to, I don't know if the Buckeyes basketball game is still on. So I got to maybe I can catch the end. They were struggling at first. They were playing Cincinnati.
I heard. Yeah.
So maybe I can catch the end of that. I'm assuming now we've been on an hour. It's probably over, but Chris, had a great time. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. We already talked about where you can find all my work at, but yeah, come find me on Twitter.
Yep. And I'm Easy Kill at a Fantasy Fan. Questions, comments, catch us on, live on YouTube Wednesday nights, right around 10 o'clock usually. And we've been doing this now for way too long, Chris, but
I don't know about too long.
No, right. Too long would be the word. We've been doing it long enough that we should probably be better than we are. Maybe I'm better than I'm at. Maybe I'm working on it. Chris Allen, I had a blast. I'm gonna win every game this week.
I know you will. Because you're not playing me, so that's okay.
There you go. And I need to win anyway, so I can be first place. I need to be above you. Hey, say goodnight.
Good night.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.